A lot of the times when I'm talking to people about prepping, they usually ask the question, what are you prepping for? Well, if you've watched the Nat Geo TV series Doomsday Preppers, you might have heard an answer that ranges from electromagnetic pulse to the Yellowstone supervolcano, nuclear war to social collapse. Well, my answer to that would simply be to just be prepared. The term prepper is often associated with the end of the world doomsday scenarios, almost in a negative stereotype. Even our own government has tried to demonize the idea of prepping and being prepared. Well, I'd like to help try and change that stereotype into a more positive light in just overall preparedness. It's not that I don't think the doomsday scenarios are not possible. The statistical probabilities just aren't as high as something like Hurricane Katrina or the tornadoes that hit Joplin or Hurricane Sandy. And I think the victims of those natural disasters will testify to the importance of being prepared and not relying on others to provide aid or help to you when the time comes. You need to take responsibility for yourself, for the protection of you, your family, and for the care of you and your family. And that leads to the whole idea of prepping. One of the other questions that I often get asked is, why are you prepping? Not what are you prepping for, but why? Well, there's a million reasons why, just like there's a million reasons for what. But the root cause of it all, the root issue, the root purpose for prepping, the whole reason you do it is for survival. All right, so let's get into it. You've made the decision. You want to start prepping. You need to be more prepared. You know it. You just don't know exactly what you're preparing for. That's okay. Don't worry about that. We can take care of all those things later. But where do you start? There's a million places to start. There's a million resources on the internet, and all of them will tell you something different. And I've struggled this myself. When I first got into it, I wasn't quite sure where to start. We just kept going from here to here to here to try and get a little bit of everything, and just got lost in the whole mix of it all. So where do you start? Well, the first thing, after very hard consideration, that I would recommend is coming up with a prepping plan. So a lot of people out there, they'll tell you, no, you need food and you need water, you need batteries, flashlights, knives, guns, ammo, all this other kind of stuff. And they're not wrong. You need all those. They're critical for prepping. But the very first place to start is you need a prepping plan. Now, the plan's not going to feed you. It's not going to give you water. But what it is going to do is it's going to give you a framework to build all your preps in. And the framework gives you focus. If you don't have something like that, then it's easy to get lost in all the different rabbit trails there are for prepping. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of ways to make fire and sterilize water and purify water. But do you need all those things? You need some, but the framework allows you to focus on all the key aspects, the key basics to survival, to start your prepping with, without getting lost in that minutia. It's the framework, and it's critical. So before we actually get into the plan and define it and give you my idea of what the plan should be, let me give you a couple tips really quick to help you. You need to keep it simple for starters. Keep it down to the rule of 3. You always want to have 3 different ways of doing something, whether it's purifying water, making fire, those kind of things. Keep it to the rule of 3. That way you don't get lost in all the dozens of different ways of doing things. The second tip is to give yourself goals, very short goals, especially up front. In your prepping plan, the way I've designed my plan gives you a bunch of quick successes all in a row, which helps give you encouragement that you're doing things right, that you're getting things done, and you're actually making progress. So now that we've got those couple of tips out of the way, let's get into my outline of what a prepping plan should be. All right, so now to get into the plan. First, let me give a little caveat. This is not the only way to do it. There's hundreds of ideas out there and probably a lot better ways to start. I'm really new at this, so there's probably people out there with better ideas. I've read a lot of material. I've thought about this very long and very hard. I've probably written out a script for this video a dozen times with a dozen different ideas, and I keep scribbling through them and making adjustments, and this step that I'm about to show you or explain to you is what I've come up with. It seems to make the most sense to me. It gives you the quick successes up front, and it gives you that framework to focus on and build in. So don't just take my word for it. You always need to do your research. There's tons of resources out there, but hopefully this prepping plan will help give you a framework to start prepping in. Alright, so like I've probably said a dozen times in this video already, there's dozens of different ways to do every step of prepping, probably hundreds of ways for everything. Fire, water, all those kind of different aspects. There's hundreds of ways to do it all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 basic rules for survival. And you'll probably find a lot of commonality in with a lot of what other people say. So the first one is water. The second one is food. The third is shelter. The fourth is first aid and sanitization, and the fifth is defense. Those are the 5 basic things that my prepping plan focuses on in its 7 different steps. Now, there's nothing saying that you can't expand on that, and once you've met the basic requirements for a certain level in my plan, you can add to it, change things around. Nothing's set in stone. Like I said, this is just a framework to try and get you started and get all of the basics for each of the different levels of prepping. So now, let's get into the different levels. Alright, so for these different levels, I'm going to lump food and water together as one item. Even though they're 2 separate things, for the purpose of the plan, I'm going to lump them together just because you usually do them together. If you're going to have 3 days of food, you need to have 3 days of water, etc. So that's where I'm going to start. So the basic level is the first level. It's called basic. That's all I called it. It meets the FEMA minimum of 3 days of food and water. So you have 3 days of food, 3 days of water. For shelter, it's going to assume that you shelter in place, and basically what that means is your current residence or place of where you're living is not under any current, immediate, imminent threat of being destroyed. So 3 days of food, 3 days of water, shelter in place. No real defense plan other than whatever you might have in your house, and it's not going to outline that because I don't have a defense section for the first level. And then for first aid, it's going to be a basic commercial off-the-shelf entry-level first aid kit that you might get at Walmart or Rite Aid, bundled with little bandages and all that kind of stuff, and they're like, what, 10-15 bucks. That's the first basic concept. That's the basic level. 3 days, food and water, and just some basic extra gear to go along with it. It's almost basically like you're in your house. Most people have 3 days of food in their house. Water, depending on if you have bottled water or not, you might have 3 days. You might need to get some extra supplies to meet that 3-day level. But it's basically you're staying in your house and that's what you got. That's the basic level, and that's where we're going to start. Level 1 of my prepping plan comes after the basic level. So basic, it's like level 0. And that's 3 days. You've accomplished that. You've gotten your first success towards prepping. You've met your first goal. That's awesome. Now let's step it up a level. We're going to go to the level 1 stage of my prepping plan, and that's 1 week of food, 1 week of water. It's going to have a shelter in place concept that's very similar to the basic plan, but it's also going to incorporate a very basic bug out concept. And it's basically, you've made arrangements with somebody within a 50 to 100 mile radius from where you're at that say, hey, if there's a disaster, can I come over and stay at your place until everything's cleaned up? And they say yes. You don't have any food or water at their place. You don't have any extra supplies there. You've just basically made the agreement saying, we'd like to come there if there's an emergency, and you can come here if there's an emergency there. That's your basic bug out plan. The defense, it's going to be a basic defense plan. Basically what that is, it's taking into account all the things you have into your house. Maybe you've made arrangements that, okay, we're going to evacuate the primary house and move into the basement, into a specific location, and that's where you've stored your 1 week of food and water. So that's the basic defense plan. It's not really getting into the tactical portion of defense. It's more just consolidating yourself into a central location into your house, and that's where you stay. The first aid is going to be very similar to the basic plan. It's going to be a commercial off-the-shelf first aid kit or such from Walmart or similar. You may have tweaked it a little bit, add some few enhancements or some extra gauze or cold presses or whatnot. It is still a basic. You really don't have anything other than just what you bought in a kit from a place like Walmart. So that's level 1 of the prepping plan. All right, now let's move to level 2. You first achieved a 3-day supply, and then you've moved on to the level 1, and you've got a 1-week supply of food and a 1-week supply of water. Now let's move on to level 2. Can you guess what that is? 2 weeks, 14 days, 2 weeks of food, 2 weeks of water. The shelter-in-place concept is still applicable to this, and it will actually be applicable to all the steps. The bug out plan is very similar as well. You've made an arrangement with a friend that's within a reasonable distance that you can get to in less than 1 tank of gas. Maybe even a half a tank is a better planning, because most people don't keep their tanks topped off at the full level. So your basic bug out plan is you've just made the arrangements. Hey, can I come over there if there's an emergency? Home defense plan is going to be very similar to the level 1. It's basically just using the things you have in your house. Maybe you've added a couple extra features that can help blockade doors to prevent people from entering very easily, or maybe you've got some borders to cover up windows. That's the basic concept. Maybe you've also identified some household items that you can use in case somebody does actually egress into your residence. You can use baseball bats, shovels, or whatever. You've identified something like that. You've worked out a little bit more of a plan with your family, saying, okay, these are the items we're going to use when we bug out into the basement. This is the things we're going to do to the doors and windows to keep people from coming in, that kind of stuff. First aid is going to be very similar as well. It's commercial off the shelf, but it's going to be enhanced a little bit more with some extra things like hydrogen peroxide, maybe some iodine, lots of extra gauze, some cold compresses, things like that don't necessarily fit into one of those little boxes you would buy from Walmart, but they're extra enhancements. You've got some Advil and Tylenol and things like that on hand as well. So again, this is the level 2. You're going for 2 weeks food and water, and then the rest of the things that go with that. All right, so now we've accomplished the basic level. We've accomplished level 1. We got a week of food. We've accomplished level 2. You've got 2 full weeks of food and water and supplies to keep your family safe and contained within some sort of natural disaster or whatever the event might be. 2 weeks, that's not bad. That's a great start. You've got some good successes, some good wins up front. It keeps you encouraged, and it shows that you're making progress. All right, so the next level, level 3. Can you guess what this one is? 1 week, 2 weeks? Yes, this one is 4 weeks of food. 1 month, basically, 30 days of food and water that you're shooting for in this level of the prepping plan. Your bug out plan is going to be very similar to the previous stages. It's a basic call up saying, hey, we've made the arrangement. I'm going to bug out to your location and you're going to bug out to my location should there be any disasters in the area where we need to evacuate. However, this is going to be enhanced a little bit because you've started providing them supplies to help take care of you if you have to go to that location. So say our goal for the level 3 plan is 4 weeks of food and water for your house. Well, maybe you've got a week of food and water at their house as well, along with some extra clothes and things like that to make sure that you're not a burden on them once you get there and that you've got the necessary things to keep your family mildly happy and healthy while you're in the bug out scenario. The defense plan for the 4-week, 30-day, 1-month supply is going to be a moderate level defense plan. So it's up from a basic level. And what I mean by moderate level is that you have some sort of firearm that you could incorporate into your defense plan, and at least you know how to use it, whether it's a small handgun or a hunting rifle or a hunting shotgun, something along the lines of that. And that is your firearm defense plan, and that's also to go with the accommodations you've made around the house. So you have different things that you can do to the doors. Like for my house, I have a very large piano that sits right by the front door. Very easy to slide that thing over, one nail tack in the floor to keep the wheel on that thing from rolling, and that door is not coming down. In the back door, you have couches that you can stack up in front of it. You've got some plywood or something to put over the windows, those type of things. You've actually made a little bit more extensive plans using the things in your house to prevent intruders from egressing into your residence. Your first aid kit's going to be an enhanced first aid kit. It's not going to be, you might have some of the commercial off-the-shelf things from Walmart, but this is going to be enhanced. It's going to be more like a medic's bag, a small medic's bag. And to go along with that, you'll have some books and manuals on how to take care of different wounds. You might even have some basic Red Cross level first aid training, CPR, basic first aid, cuts and scratches, and all that kind of stuff. So that's the level 3 plan. You're going for 4 weeks of food and water, or 1 month, and then all the other things that go along with that. Still not a very difficult goal to achieve. It might take a little bit longer to get to than your 2-week plan did, but it's not that much further away from that, and that could still be a really quick win in your prepping plan. All right, now you start getting into the more serious part of the prepping plan, the more long-term aspect. This is the level 4 stage of my prepping plan. So level 3 was 1 month, 30 days, 4 weeks. Level 4 is 3 months, 90 days. So you went from a month now to a 3-month, 90-day period. So for food and water, your goal is to have 90 days worth of supplies for food and water. For your bug out, this is going to be an enhanced bug out plan like the previous level. You've made arrangements to bug out to a location. You've started to stockpile food and water there. Instead of having maybe just a week's worth of stuff, now you've got almost a month's worth of stuff there that you can use in the bug out scenario. You've got clothing, you've got some extra money stored there, or some precious metals, silver, gold, that kind of stuff. You might even have some defense options that you've stored there. So your bug out plan is a more enhanced version of some of the basic levels. Now you can still use this shelter in place concept with this too, like in the previous steps. So you can have an option. If you need to bug out, you can bug out, but if you can shelter in place, then you shelter in place. So you've got all your food and supplies stored in a central location in the house that you can bug out to. You've developed a defense plan for it that incorporates some basic firearms that you have in your house, whether they're a hunting style firearm or a small handgun. So that's your defensive plan. You've coordinated with your family. Your family, more than just you, has training on that firearm, and that would lead to the more enhanced defense plan for this level 4 of the prepping plan. For first aid, you have an enhanced first aid capability. At least one of your family members or whoever's bugging out with you or sheltering in place with you has been trained by the Red Cross in some basic first aid concepts. You've got more than just a commercial off-the-shelf first aid kit. So that's the level 4 plan, and the level 5 gets serious. So take a second to review the level 4 stuff and get that idea ingrained in your head and that concept, and then we'll move on to level 5. All right, so level 4 was pretty serious with 3 months of supplies. Level 5, you're going to double that. You're shooting for 6 months supplies of food and water. Now, your shelter in place concept is still applicable, and your bug out plan is still applicable as well. For the bug out concept, it could still be just the arrangements you've made with somebody that you know you can get to in case of an emergency. You've started to stockpile stuff there. He's got preps at your place, you've got preps at his place, so that if you have to bug out to either location, you're going to be good if you have to leave some stuff behind. Now, to enhance that bug out concept, you might at this point consider a bug out location that is common to a couple different families, like somebody owns some property and they've got a couple cabins on it or something, hunting cabins, and that's your bug out location. So it's not just another residence, it's actually a separate, more isolated location, which would require you to have preps at that location as well. If you've got 6 months of food and water at your house, you might be able to take some of that stuff with you, but you want to make sure that you've got adequate food and supplies at that location if you have to bug out. So you're pretty much going to want to duplicate your efforts between your shelter in place residence and your bug out location if it's a more remote bug out location, like some sort of cabin in the woods, or even if you have a shelter that you had built somewhere in a more remote location. Your defense concept is going to be a more advanced type of concept. You're going to incorporate more defense style weapons, so higher caliber handguns, maybe some tactical shotguns. You don't necessarily at this stage have to have an AR. You can if you happen to have one, great. If not, at this point I don't think it's necessarily A requirement in the plan, always a good thing to have. But this defense plan is more some tactical shotguns like the Remington 870 with an extended magazine tube, and maybe a couple Glocks or 9mm 40 or 45 caliber handguns, multiples that your other family members can be armed with. You yourself have extensive training with these firearms, and your family members have at least a comfortable understanding of them. So if they have to use them, they can draw down and they can use that firearm without feeling overwhelmed by the pressure of having to use that. Your first aid capabilities are going to be a more enhanced first aid capability than they were prior. This is a more advanced level of first aid. So at least you have at least one party member has something along the lines of maybe EMT training. And then a couple other people also have some basic first aid training as well. You might have a first responder or a trauma kit as part of your first aid. You have all the basic stuff that goes along with those commercial off-the-shelf kits. You've got extra gauze, cold compresses, you've got some peroxide, medicines, ibuprofen, and all those other kind of things. You've also got the more advanced capabilities of a trauma or maybe like a field medic concept in your 6-month plan. So that wraps up the 6-month plan. It's a lot more advanced than the previous plan and definitely the ones before that. And so take a few minutes to review that plan as well. 6 months is a long time to prepare for, and there's a lot of different aspects, and we'll go into those in some subsequent videos. This is just kind of outlining the general theme of the plan right now. So 6 months, that's your goal at this stage of the prepping. All right, now for level 6. Level 6 is very comprehensive and very complex, and the basic concept I'm going to cover in this level 6 step of the prepping plan are just scratching the surface. This is where you start getting into all the different facets of what you can prep for. So I'm going to try and keep this within the framework that we've built so far. Level 6 is going to be an entire year's supply of food and water. This isn't some sort of homestead that you've got that's sustainable. This is still just a shelter-in-place concept or an advanced bug-out concept where you have an identified location, whether it's another friend's residence or a specific place, hunting cabin, bunker you've built in the woods. This is the using that concept. So you're sheltering in place or you're bugging out to a designated area. Because of the advanced nature of this plan, you have to have duplicates. So if you have a year's supply of food and water at your shelter-in-place location, you need to have a year's supply of food and water at your bug-out location as well. The defense strategy or your defense plan for this 6th level of your preparedness plan is going to be a more advanced concept, much like the previous level. You're going to have incorporated more home defense style firearms into your plan, like tactical shotguns, higher caliber handguns, the 9mm, 40, 45. You might even have incorporated a semi-automatic centerfire rifle, much like the AR, but not necessarily an AR. While they're extremely popular, and I would highly recommend you have one by this stage of your prepping plan, I still don't make it a requirement as long as you've got a pretty extensive defense plan with other firearms. You also need to have extensive training in how to use those firearms, and your family members will also have close to the same level of training that you have and the same level of competency and confidence of use in those firearms. Your first aid plan is going to be more extensive than the previous version. It's going to incorporate EMT training for at least one member, as well as possibly some nursing training, some more advanced medical care training like that. Your first aid kit's going to be more comprehensive. It's going to have first responder capabilities. It's going to have maybe some field medic capabilities with it as well. Your bug-out location or your shelter-in-place location will also have some medical capabilities, almost like a mini medical facility for you to perform other stuff that you might need to do. This stage in your first aid plan, you're probably going to want to have the capabilities to address gaping wounds, whether it's a bullet hole, knife gashes, large cuts and scrapes, and things of that nature as well. So that is the 6th level of the preparedness plan. It's a lot more extensive than the previous levels. Like I said before, it's an entire year's supply of food and water, not only at your shelter-in-place location, but at your bug-out location as well. Now, if you have absolutely no intention of sheltering in place and your goal is bugging out to the specified location, then I would probably say you don't have to duplicate your efforts there. But if you're going for I want to shelter in place or have the same capabilities if I bug out, then you're definitely going to want to make sure you've duplicated your efforts and have the same amount of materials and capabilities at each location. So that's the sixth plan. This is going to be a longer term goal to try and get to. It's a lot more extensive, a lot more money's involved in getting to a year-long plan. I'm not even there myself, but we'll go into those kind of details later. So that's the level 6. Stay tuned and we'll go on to the next and last level. All right, level 7. This is the big one. This is not a shelter in place. This is not a bug out. This is a homestead. This is a rural location. It might be a bug out location, but it is a homestead. It has the ability to provide unending quantities of self-sustaining food and water. So you've got multiple sources of water, whether there's a lake or a river nearby, you've got a well drilled, those kind of things. You've got cropland that you can farm and grow crop. You've got all the seeds you need to grow the stuff. It's already in a self-sustaining mode where it's producing food for you. So it's going to at least take you through a year is the minimum, just like the previous level. However, this is a year that is self-sustaining and rejuvenating. So it gives you year after year after year of food and water. Your home defense plan, your defense strategy for this is going to be an extensive defense strategy. This is where it will incorporate the AR platform style centerfire semi-automatic rifle, standard capacity 30-round magazines, tactical shotguns, large caliber handguns, 9mm, 40s, 45s, hunting rifles, the whole gambit. It can include all of them. All of the members, or at least a majority percentage of them, have extensive trainings on these firearms, their capabilities. They're trained, they have good understanding of some basic tactics in weapons combat. One or two of the members of the Homestead team have extensive training in tactical theories, and so they have the ability to generate good tactical defense plans for the Homestead. And they have the capability to bring a tactical response to any kind of threat that might come up to the Homestead. The medical plan for this level 7, the Homestead concept, is going to be extensive. Like I said before, one or more people trained in EMT. You have nursing capabilities. You might even have someone who has doctor capabilities. Now, I'm not talking about like brain surgery capabilities, but your facility also has the ability to address gaping wounds, broken bones, gunshots, those kind of things. You're not going to be stitching together veins or nerves, or putting somebody's innards back inside of them and hey, everything's going to be okay. But you do have the ability to patch, stitch, and make sure that it's done properly in a sterile environment, or at least near sterile environment. So as you can see from those kind of concepts, from the defensive strategies, being able to apply an extreme tactical force to a threat to the homestead, and being able to address the more comprehensive first aid medical capabilities. It's almost not even a first aid concept anymore. It's a medical concept that incorporates more than just basic first aid. The level 7 homesteading is a comprehensive, all-inclusive plan. It does everything. This is your location that you've got firewood, you've got crops, you've got livestock, all the stuff to take care of those things, feed and nurture. You've got rejuvenating water supplies. This is the prepper's dream. This is the prepper's paradise. This is what it's all about. Attaining this level is like it's the mecca of prepping. So as you can see, the level 7 is extremely comprehensive. It could take years to get to if you're trying to do this on your own. Now, the level 7 doesn't necessarily mean it has to be on your own. It could be somebody else's homestead that you've just made arrangements with or agreements with. A best friend or a good buddy of yours says, hey, when it hits the fan, when society collapses, or when we need a bug out, we're coming to your place. All my stuff, all my preps go into you, to sustain your land, your property. This is something that takes commitment, and you would have to spend weekends out there, helping to prepare the place and take care of the place. If you're in a residential area in a city kind of environment and you've got a big corporate job and whatnot, it might be kind of difficult for you to attain something like this. So after you get to that 1 year, food and water with the shelter in place or bug out concept, then you evolve into something like the homestead concept. And like I said before, this doesn't necessarily have to be your property. If it is, great. If not, then it's just somebody that you have to have that trust. You have to have that relationship, that connection, that this is the agreement. And because dumping a year's worth of resources into something like that is expensive. There's a lot of risk involved if for some reason a relationship falls apart. So be wary and be careful of those kind of things. So I say that's my 7-level plan, but if you counted them out, there's actually 8 levels if you include the basic concept as a level. I honestly don't count that as a level. That's your first stepping stone. Everybody should have the basic 3-day concept covered. That should almost be a mandated requirement that everybody that's living has to have something like that, just because everybody needs to have some level of preparedness. And that's a great place to start. However, I don't include it in the primary 7 levels that I outlined. It is part of the process. You have to hit that stepping stone before you move on. And maybe you do it all, the basic and the level 1, all in the same time. Who knows? That's up to you. So the 7 levels, basic plus the 7, that's the concept. That's my prepping plan. And like I said before, this is not set in stone, and there's a lot of different aspects that you can incorporate into this. Now, I'll outline it more in the details, and I'll have to see if I can do some sort of like downloadable document that's got my concept written in it. I'm actually thinking about writing up an entry to submit to Survival Blog. So if I do find something like that, I'll update the description and put an annotation in there with a link so that you guys can find that. I think the plan is a great concept. Like I said, it gives you that framework, so you don't get lost in all the different aspects of it. The basic level 1 and 2 and even 3, you really just need to focus on just those concepts, just the food and water and the basics of the defense and first aid. Levels 4, 5, and 6, you can start incorporating more environmental variables. Even level 3, you can start incorporating some of the environmental variables. In other words, like if you're in a really cold location in the wintertime, you're going to want to make sure that your preps include stuff that will accommodate that cold weather environment. Some cold weather gear, sleeping bags, or something that might go down to a colder level than a summertime sleeping bag or whatnot. Cold weather ski type clothes that to keep you warm in case you have to bug out or you have to leave your residence for some reason. Then at least you have the ability to keep yourselves warm. So like I said, there's a lot of different concepts that you can incorporate into these plans. But for at least the basic and the levels 1 and 2, just focus on getting that done. And even level 3, focus on getting that done. And once you've got those basics in level 3 done, then you can start incorporating some more environmental variables, whether it's some stuff, extra water because it's an extremely hot environment, or cold weather stuff because it's a cold environment, those types of things. And then as you progress, level 4s and 5 and 6, you can start getting more comprehensive and incorporate additional things like solar power and all those other kind of concepts. And I'm going to follow this video with a small series. It's actually going to be probably a long series because I'm going to go over each one of these levels, the basic all the way up through level 7, and kind of outline and put some more definition to the concepts to help you get a better idea instead of just listening to me ramble on about level 1, level 2, level 3. It'll give you at least some ideas to fill in that framework. So stay tuned, and we will go over all the different levels in some subsequent videos, and I'll show you how far I've gotten so far and the things that I've done, some things that I've found that work and some things that I've found that don't work. So like I said before, those are the 7 levels plus the basic level. Some people may or may not agree. Everybody's got their own way of doing it. My whole idea in this was just try to give you a framework, someplace to start, just some quick goals to get to the point where you could say, yes, I've got 2 weeks of food and I feel good that my family will be okay for at least 2 weeks. And then you hit that month mark And let me tell you, hitting a month worth of supplies in your house and having a basic bug out strategy of a place that you can go and actually have the capability to transport all your preps to that location if the time comes is a very good feeling to have. I that's where I'm at right now, and I can't imagine having 3 months or 6 months or even a year, or even these people that have the homesteads like Southern Prepper One. Big shout out to you. I really thank you for all the videos you do. That's been a great encouragement to me. You have some great information. So if you have not seen Southern Prepper One's channel, he's got some awesome stuff out there, and he actually did a scenario series of videos where he kind of, played the role of, okay, we've lost all the power and we don't have any capabilities anymore, and this is how we survive. So check out his channel, give him a subscription. It's really great information. But anyways, that is my basic prepping plan and my concept, my framework. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it makes sense to you. Please take some time to look through the description. It'll get a little bit more comprehensive down there and at least give you an outline of it. And then stay tuned for the subsequent videos that will go into more detail for each one of the levels. God bless our military members past and present. Thank you very much for your service. Long live the Republic. Keep your powder dry, folks. Thanks for watching.